used to think squats was a strength problem. I chased heavier weights for years, but sitting at my desk all day, tight hips, tight ankles, that was the real limitation. This was the most important shift in my training career. Not just squatting heavy, but squatting better. Most people think that squat depth is a strength issue, but in my years of chasing load, I realized it was more of a mobility issue and also learning about improving my form and technique. I never thought about ankle mobility until now. I understand the importance of moving better, right? The best thing I can do for myself is maintaining long-term mobility. Since my love for squats have gotten deeper, learning and leaning into squat depth became a goal of mine. That means hyperfixating on mobility and just moving better. So I'm someone who works from home, so I'm sitting most of the day. To be honest, I'm sitting about 10 hours throughout my day. So poor hip mobility comes into play. So my obsession for depth within my squat came at the perfect time, right? Because it wasn't about strength, it was about mobility. So if you feel the same way, you're in the right place. We're not just earning squat depth, right? And we're not forcing it either. Depth in your squat isn't about forcing it. It's something you practice. So why does depth within your squat feel bad? Living a sedentary life like myself, sitting most of the day, most hours of the day, it often comes from having tight calf muscles. And then we also may have limited hip flexion. I noticed with that my hip flexion needed some work. Sitting and our hips in that bent position shortens and also tightens the hip flexor muscles. So that reduces mobility, also weakening the glutes, right? I'll share some hacks later, but your nervous system is essentially protecting those unfamiliar ranges, right? So that prolongs desk sitting. This can be threatening to your posture, triggering your fight or flight, right? So where your muscles are is where you're bracing. You may also experience shallow breath, right? Or you find that you're bracing a lot. Instability, it creates all sorts of tension. So in the end, your body isn't broken. It's just protecting what it hasn't practiced. So here's a simple checklist I like to do. This will help assess my hips and also my ankles. Make sure to have clear space and non-restricted clothing on. Concentrate on our hips and ankles. So we stand with our feet hip width apart. Then we want to bend our knees and lower our butt toward the ground. So here we want to make sure our feet are flat. We don't want them to lift off the ground. If we do experience that, that means our ankles might just be tight, right? They're not bending easily, or you may lose your balance. Also, you want to watch your depth. So if you notice your chest stays tall, but you can't seem to go deeper, it's probably tight hips. Is this where we're feeling tension? Do we feel stiff? Do we feel like we have to hold our breath or we have to hold on to something? Are we rushing through the movement, right? Or maybe noticing a collapse, falling into the bottom position with no control. I notice when I'm even in a back squat position, when I feel like it just may be too challenging for me, my first trigger move is to rush into the bottom position of the squat where I've lost control. My ankles may not be as steady. So these things you want to pay attention to when you're doing a squat assessment on yourself, or even in your regular back squat or body weight squat. So essentially, we're not judging our squat. This is for information. So we're listening to our body. We're looking at what we're doing, and we're using this self-check to assess. It's feedback. So to help aid in hip and ankle mobility, I do 990 hip openers to really open up my hips for any leg day, right? We are rotating one leg externally in front and the other internally behind, both at a 90-degree angle at the knee. For ankle mobility, I tried different dorsiflexion exercises and drills. Tried one elevated, but I enjoy doing them on the mat, right? I like to do the half kneeling ankle rocks, keeping your heel down and moving your knee forward over your toes, making sure to keep your feet flat. I like to do 2 sets of 15 for both dorsiflexion rocks and my 990 hip openers. Ankle and hip mobility is the plated squat hold or the rig squat, right? Where with the plate, you're rocking your hips side to side, also while holding a plate, keeping the hips forward and your chest up. Sometimes I'll add in pulses to this workout to make for even more dynamic mobility exercises before I get into goblet squats, back squats, body weight squats, any squat movement or hinge movement. I tell you, leg days are my favorite days because I just love doing lower body mobility. It's my favorite. Also, these mobility exercises I added to my leg day warm up routine, and some I like to add into my real life. Some of these workouts I like to do while I'm at home. I love to sit in that plated squat position, that deep squat position, for a couple of minutes throughout the day. Also, I like to sit on the ground and also stand up from the ground. I've learn to sit up from the ground in like a cross leg position without any assistance, leaning on something, leaning forward to use the ground as balance. I've learned just to get up. And I think that helps with my hip and ankle mobility, right? I'll do some dynamic stretches right before I go to sleep, sometimes right on my bed. I don't even have to get off my bed, I just do them on my bed. Also, when I'm at work, I like to stand while I'm working from home. So I have one of those desks that stand with you, and I love it. A self-rising desk. I love it. I think it helps with lower back pain and also my hips, and they don't feel. I feel less tension in my hip and ankle mobility, and it gives me an opportunity to do even more stretching. I feel like I'm more aware of my body with my self-rising desk. Sometimes I'll add in some hip opening exercises while at my desk for about 15 minutes. If I can get in about 2 sessions of dynamic stretches while I'm working that 10-hour shift, that is perfect because there were moments where I didn't do them at all and I experienced hip flexion, like soreness and tension in that area. My glutes were really, really tight. My quads were really tight, right? I love adductor rock backs. They really help with warming up your inner thighs and then also bring your hips for any squatting and hinge movement. So with these mobility workouts, they help with correcting those familiar movements and patterns that we're used to. That sitting position that creates a pattern that kind of restricts us, right? Our ankles, our hips. So this video wasn't just about squat depth. It's helping you grow your confidence in the gym and also outside of the gym. We're all about making real life tasks easier, right? So sitting at your desk won't feel so mundane, but also it won't feel restricting, especially if we come up with little routines during our workday to help us feel more comfortable and confident. Do mobility drills to help us get rid of that tension in our hips and also our ankles. Also, picking up things. The amount of times I find myself in that awkward position, picking up toys, taking out trash, taking things out of my trunk. We want to feel stable and more confident in our everyday life. So with these great techniques, we can learn so much from them, right? Mobility and also using lower loads with maybe higher reps, especially in that 1 set of 20. We're learning to rebuild a more healthy and familiar pattern, but also using mobility to help us feel better when doing the movements. 1 set of 20 back squats, right? But that mobility is helping us feel more confident in doing the back squat. So what would you say limits you when doing a squat and wanting to achieve a deep squat? Or if you don't want to achieve a deep squat, what are some limitations that you feel like you're dealing with as of right now? And if you aren't, share with me some progressions you've made in your squat journey. I know when I first started doing back squats, my biggest limitations were my hips. I wasn't really good at doing just a basic squat. I felt like my hips were just all over the place, but then they were really tight at the same time. It was so awkward. But once I started implementing warm-up routines that really focused on hip mobility and also ankle mobility, that became my whole focus. I really did hyperfixate on ankles and hip mobility because I wanted such a deep squat. And I think it helps me feel more confident, but also I feel like everyday tasks are way more easier than they used to be. Also, I feel like with hip mobility, it made me a lot stronger if I were to even add more load onto the bar. So if you want to practice your depth without forcing it, I do put this approach inside my 1 set of 20 confidence cycle. I created a full body routine with some hip and ankle mobility workouts you can do that really helped me when it came to squat depth. So definitely check it out. Let me know what you think. and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.
As I get a little older, I realize life is perspective, and my perspective may differ from yours. I want to say thank you to everyone that's been down with me.